Welcome to Conversations for Course Creators. My name is Lucas Marino, and today's episode is about fall timing. Not fall like falling, like, gravity, but the season of the fall and the strategies that we should be considering at this time of year. Now, there are going to be some people in this audience who will disagree with me that September is the fall, but September is definitely the kickoff or the threshold for considering fall activities in my book here in Eastern Virginia. And it's always kind of felt like September was this natural milestone in the life cycle of the year for things related to final planning for the year, not just because you're entering close to the final quarter, but because there's so much happening in life that is like a period of transition right around the beginning of September. For example, the summer is closing, people are wrapping up their last vacations of the summer, the school systems are open, college kids are going back to school, middle school and high school and elementary school kids are off to school. Everything's happening. We're getting back in the groove of this kind of routine throughout the year that, in some ways, starts for us, parent types and student types and teacher types, in September. So it's an interesting turning point to me in the year. In many ways, when I was growing up, I felt like this was the beginning of my year, right? So we have, and how can I forget to mention American football, right? So football season's getting ready to kick off. They're already breaking out commercials about pumpkin spice, man. And that's my least favorite part of all this, but it's a real sign, right? It's a real sign that things are starting to turn. We even have leaves falling off the trees here where I'm currently located in the Williamsburg, Virginia area at the head of my driveway. So we're moving. We're moving in that direction. Now, I'm not obviously creating a podcast to talk about seasonal change. I want to talk about the change in your business that happens at this time of year, and more so about the change that will happen in your business as you close out the year because you took the time now at the end of the summer and the beginning of the fall to really hash out your strategy to close the year out. It doesn't make much sense to wait till December to hash out your strategy for closing the year. You're better off doing that now. You've already passed your midpoint where you can measure the success of the first half of the year. You've implemented a few changes based on that performance, hopefully, and that happened right around June, July. And you've had another month now to consider your strategies. It's time to put those plans in motion. Okay. It's time to put those plans in motion. So we've got 3 to 4 months left to finish out the year strong. So we need to start thinking about projects. Okay. Big projects are going to take big time. And most projects, like self publishing a book or launching a course or creating a new coaching program or creating some type of valuable content that you're going to then share with other people, normally takes at the very least a month and usually close to 3 months. And in the case of like publishing the book, could take anywhere from 3 months to a year, right? With 3 months probably being the fastest you can do it and have a solid quality product in your hands. Now, there will be people that can teach you and will praise the capability of producing that type of work in less time. But if you talk to experts in the self publishing field and you talk to experts in the course creation field, will tell you that it is really hard to produce something of significant quality in these realms in less than 2 to 3 months minimum. Okay. So you need to make sure that you're considering big project time. The other part about this equation that I think people underestimate is they say, well, I know you're saying it could take, and it should probably take right around 90 days to do this in the fastest possible way with significant quality considerations, but I know for a fact I can do it faster. Well, you can. We have a little phrase in project management about if you want it bad, you'll get it bad, right? So if you really need to crash your schedule, you really need to dedicate all your time to this thing, you're going to drastically increase the risk of problems with the product. You're going to increase the risk of schedule conflict because you're now jamming all that work in a shorter period of time and it's competing with other demands on your time and energy. And so as you increase that pressure, and you increase that volume in that small period of time, you increase risk. And there is no two ways around that. So you can outsource some of your work, you can bring on team members, you can do all these things, but it's still going to take a significant amount of time and investment to make those things happen in the right way. Also, in a way that doesn't drive you nuts. You should be enjoying this process. You should be enjoying the process of creating courses for your clients. And in order to do that, you don't want to feel like you're too crunched. So now we've looked at some big projects. They're going to take time. We're not going to be able to do many of them at once if we're trying to condense this in shorter periods of time. And we have to look at our running projects, parallel projects, right? So we've got, let's say we're going to release a package of products. We're going to release an ebook or a virtual summit or a course with one of those other things, right? So we're going to have a course and a book, or we're going to have a course and a course, right? Two distinct courses in a bundle. You have multiple projects of significant scope in your hands. You need to do two of these by the end of the year. You are in crunch time by September. Okay. You are definitely in crunch time by September if you're trying to get this stuff done before the close of the year. So we've got to consider the fact that with that environment now being real, we have other demands on our time in this last 3 months that are unique to this time of year, i.e., the holidays, right? So we are going to have, if you have little ones, Halloween's a pretty big deal around here, but you have more significant holidays like Thanksgiving, Christmas, the New Year, all that time period in December, like you basically lose half of December, right? So if we lose half of December, we're now down to 2.5 months. We've got October and we've got November and a half a month in December to execute. Now, that's because we've spent all of September putting all the foundational pieces in place to make sure we can succeed. You also have to remember that just because you want to get the project done doesn't necessarily mean it's where it should be by the end of the year. I prefer to have everything in place by the end of the year if January 1 live and up and running is really the goal, which means not just having a product in existence, but marketing and selling and promoting it in the right way leading up to the new year. So let me back up because I said quite a bit there. With the holidays and with all the change in life with schools and kids going into new schedules and work travel trying to squeeze in before the end of the year and other things that you've got going on, you're now looking at producing these significant products and executing these significant projects to produce those products. So, how do we necessarily go about doing this? Well, this is where structure and discipline are really going to matter for you. Okay. If you create a framework with which you can work realistically, right? You can do this realistically. I know that I can exercise a certain amount of time on this project per day of the week, and I put that in place. It's not enough to just say that. You have to go block that time out on your schedule. Okay. You know that you can do this work in that period of time that you need to do it in with the right tools as well. So, do you have those tools? If you don't have those tools yet, you're also going to need familiarity time with those tools. So, let's say you're standing up a new course or you're standing up your first course and you're just now getting into a learning management system, which is a fancy way of saying the software that your course will be built and hosted in. Well, that's going to take some time for you to get familiar with that software and to produce a quality product in that software if this is the first time you've used it. So you're going to lose some time there as well. You're going to need to set aside some of that production time for tool and equipment familiarization. All right. So build that into your plan. Also, if you're going to outsource any of this work to other people, whether they be contractors, teammates, whatever the case may be, your second cousin, whatever, you're going to need to be at the mercy of their schedule as well. So, what did we used to say in the military? An emergency on your part is not an urgency on mine, or something similar to that, right? Like we weren't in emergency response mode just because you procrastinated, is basically what it comes down to. This is real for everybody in this kind of situation. Your friends, your coworkers, they all have lives, they all have schedules, they all have their own projects going on. So you're going to need to make sure that you can fit into their schedule and schedule them into your world of work accordingly as well. So let me backtrack just a little bit more and say we've discussed considerations for the amount of work we're going to have to do. We've discussed interference from things like national holidays. We've discussed a change in schedules and routines. We're now talking about setting up the framework for success, blocking out that time on the schedule, getting familiar with the right tools. Of course, we're going to have to do some research as well, right? Even if you're a subject matter expert on something, you need to start pulling in resources, external resources, in order to really provide a comprehensive solution for your clients. So you're going to have a little bit of time to get familiar with what's currently going on out there. And it's going to, that those targets are going to move over the course of your product and project. You're also going to want to consider if you're going to do a trial run or a beta test of your product. So let's say we can get the product done in 2 months. Very aggressive. We get this big course off the ground in 2 months. And part of that launch is going to be launching a social media campaign to get the word out, launching an email distribution to get the word out to your email list, and also running the product through some form of beta test. Now, you can do this with people you already know, or you can do this with new clients. I say mix them up, do a little bit of both. So you're going to have to get the word out about this new product you have, and you're going to want to run that test before the end of the year. So this way, when you go fully live to the open public, you have already put your product through some feedback mechanisms with potential ideal client avatars or people that would sit through your course, right? Or read your book or attend your virtual summit. That's going to take some time as well. You need to give those people time to digest the material, interact with your product, and formulate and provide their feedback. So, quite a bit to consider here, right? So, we're getting a little bit closer to the end of the line as far as the planning conversation goes. Let's see here. What else do we have? Oh, we've done our beta test, but now we need some time out on the market. So, let's say we want to really start hitting that brand new year crowd, right? Everyone's making their resolutions. I'm going to launch a course or I'm going to do a book, and you're trying to get ahead of that so that your product can help those people. Well, it needs to be fully finished and available to them. And oh, by the way, they have to be aware and interested in using your product as the solution to their problem at that time of year. And yes, there is going to be a tremendous amount of competition for their attention, which means that you're going to most likely need some immersion period before that with your social media and email marketing strategy. Now, what does that really mean? I'm using, big fancy words here. You're going to have to get that social media marketing campaign out on the streets a couple of weeks before you actually want people to respond very strongly to it. So, people are going to be distracted by the holidays. They're going to be distracted by all the events. They're going to be distracted by all the things, and rightfully so, because those are things that really matter in life. And so your product's not necessarily the first thing on their mind. So let's say you want to be hot and heavy in early January, where you're going to want at least the month of December, the word about your product being out there. You want it visible. You want people talking about it. You want them familiar with it. This way you can start making sales in December for people that want to take action in January. And then the people that are going to wait until January to go ahead and purchase, at least they've had time to do their research, get familiar, and decide on you as someone they know, like, and trust, and that your product is a viable solution and a good fit for their problems. They need some time often to come to that decision. So you want to give it to them through that immersion period. So we can leverage that half of December that we potentially lose for work to go ahead and get that marketing campaign out there on the streets. It's not a complete loss. We can be doing social media marketing during that time period, right? Not product development, but social media marketing and email marketing. Now, the other concern that some people have at that time of year is, and it should be a big concern this year because of the state of our economy, is the available funds for people to expend on your product. So, depending on how your product is priced and whether it's a lower priced commodity item, right? Like in the under $50 range, or if it's a little bit higher than that, or if it's actually priced in the hundreds and thousands of dollars, not hundreds of thousands, hundreds or thousands of dollars, then you're going to be competing against some of those economic demands that people have at this time of year. Okay. And that's just the reality. So, the higher priced your packages go and the lower marketing and strength of network that you have, the more you should expect that you're probably going to start with some trickled sales, right? It's going to be relatively low numbers at first that will pick up as people's free available income becomes more available and the word about your product gets out there. So, we're going to have some moderate expectations at the end of the year for product sales and for immersion with the market. Now, there are definitely people that are going to go, well, dude, I've had my greatest success that time of year. And I've actually had my worst sales in the late summer. And that's absolutely correct as well for a lot of people. I've seen where, different industries have different waves of activity when it comes to marketing and sales in those different times of year. And some markets do really well at the end of the year. They really, really do. Okay. People are actually at home with some downtime, and that's when they want to do the course, or that's when they want to go through the coaching program, or that's when they want to get a head start on what their goals are for the beginning of the next year. So you may see a strong sales, you may see strong sales numbers in in that last month, 2 months of the year, despite those challenges that I listed before. And that's like best case scenario. That's a great thing. So we don't worry about that. We want to prepare for less and be absolutely humbled and surprised and excited about better, right? That's kind of a healthy mindset to walk into that time of year with. And then my last point on this is going to be that there's something magical about this time of year, right? There's something that makes the fall and the early winter just amazing for so many people. It's also for many other people the hardest time of year, especially if they've suffered a loss at this time of year. It makes the holiday period very difficult for people. Don't do this to yourself, right? Be very intentional about how you deal with this time of year and all the different challenges that I discussed early in the podcast, and be real with yourself about what that means for you in your context. If you're the type of person that really just enjoys this time of year and all of the festivities, you're not going to want to have to interfere with those things by stopping for work, right? You're going to want to enjoy that time. You're going to want to be able to enjoy that time of year with your loved ones, and you don't want to be bound to this launch or to this product development cycle that you promised yourself 6 months ago that you failed to really execute on until the time was close. So this is one of the reasons why I bring this up now. You will find yourself in that situation trying to cram this thing to the finish line at the end of the year when it may not be the best time to have that kind of pressure on you. For those that don't do very well emotionally at this time of year in the fall and into the winter, it's the same equation. It's just a different reason, right? Don't put that kind of pressure and weight on yourself if you can avoid it, knowing that you're going to have a bit of a rough spot at at this time of year. So, I guess I could summarize all that by saying try to reflect as much as you possibly can on the reality of your situation coming into these last 3 to 4 months of the year. Really try and infuse some of your or as much of your own personal context into this conversation with yourself as you possibly can. I have a mentor who takes the month of December off, and I am just enamored with that plan. That sounded so foreign to me when I first started out as an entrepreneur, and it still sounded somewhat impossible for me years afterward. But I realized that they weren't really doing nothing. They were just taking time away from client work and focusing on themselves and a more relaxed pace and doing things that nourished them and their business in a positive way. They just weren't taking on clients and they weren't taking on outside projects, but they were still productive. They were still working at what was an enjoyable pace for them. And they were sprinkling that work in amongst all of the other family and friend obligations that they have at that time of year. And I realized, oh, that's what they meant by take the month of December off. They really meant I'm making it what's best for me, right? And I'm going to reduce as much risk and interference in this equation as I possibly can. So I'll close on that note. I want to thank you guys for enduring the last few weeks of silence as I took some time off to do my strategy planning and spend time with my family on vacation and do all the things that I felt were right for us to close out this summer. I had a lot of client projects kind of coming to a head at this time of year in September and late August. And it was right for me to step away just for a few weeks from the podcast to dedicate that energy to them. In many ways, that's exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about planning your and strategizing for the end of the year. There was some reality there, and there was some very early knowledge and awareness of that reality. And I was very intentional about taking that time away. And I didn't walk into this podcast stressed or upset about not releasing a podcast sooner because of that. I had promised myself that's what I was going to do. And then I did it. And that made me feel good about the decision to step away for a few weeks. So I know you didn't get to have a new episode when you may have expected one, but I can promise you it was better for both of us that I took that time away to do that planning, do that strategizing, and put together the right steps for us to succeed together through the rest of the year. Okay. You guys have a great one out there. If you need to get a hold of me for any reason, you can go ahead and email me at lucas@marinotraining.com. Yes. And I've got like 4 email addresses I have to think of. And I'm really excited to start releasing new episodes or not episodes, new issues of my weekly newsletter. So if you're interested in joining that newsletter, check out the link in the comment section or in the episode description below. And also take us a visit over at marinotraining.com and you can sign up there as well. Okay, have fun creating those courses and don't forget to be good humans to each other, okay?